Welcome to The Kingstonian, a podcast that profiles people who are passionate about what they do for a living, what organization they belong to, or the community they are a part of. Here is your host, Dave Cunningham.
Thank you, Steve. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Radio station CFRC started broadcasting from Kingston, Ontario back in October of 1922. Since then, the station has offered thousands of student and community volunteers the opportunity to learn, to experiment, to share, to communicate. For some, it was a diversion from their academic pursuits. For others, a chance to share their story. And for a small few, the start of a new career. And such was the case for my guest in this episode. He enrolled at Queen's University, spent time at CFRC, and eventually began to carve out a 20-year broadcast career working at various stations here in Kingston. We sat down to talk about that experience, the people that he worked with along the way, and some of the music he played. And that's where I began my conversation with Rick Choma, Rolling Stones. Welcome, Rick.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, Rolling Stones.
Why did you pick that song of all the Rolling Stones songs out there?
Yeah, I'll just tell you a brief story. My mom used to work for CJBQ, and she nailed a job in the office doing traffic manager jobs, and she would do the logs for the DJs and the news peoples and make sure that the commercials were there. So she really enjoyed it, and she was there for quite a stint. And one of the benefits for me was that she was able to get discount LPs, and I would load up at Christmas. I was allowed about 6 or 7, maybe even 8 at one time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So one of the first ones I got was that, because I did like the Stones and I just liked their style. And Goat's Head Soup was the name of the album. And I liked that particular song. And I think I played it during one of my first shows here at CFRC. It would have been gold by then because the album came out in 73. But it was one of those ones that just kind of stuck with you, you know. Mm-hmm. And I got quite a few different albums from CJBQ at the time. They would order them and we would pay like $3.50, $4 for an album. And my mom said, well, here's your Christmas present. Which ones do you want? Just write them down and I'll order them for you. So that's a brief history behind that song.
I don't know whether we should explain to folks what an album is.
Yeah,
given everything has changed over the years, but I think vinyl is trying to make a comeback in some quarters. Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Did you ever see the Stones play live?
No, I never did. I wish I would have.
I would have, yeah. That's a show I would have liked to have seen as well. Of course, you can still do it because they'll be performing for a number of years.
They will be. They don't seem to stop. You're right.
I think is Mick Jagger 80 yet? He's pretty close.
Well, yeah, maybe. I wouldn't be surprised.
Now, you grew up, as you said, in Belleville.
In Belleville, yeah.
And what brought you to Queens?
Well, it was a bit of a controversy. You see, I didn't want to go to Queens.
Oh.
Because I wasn't academic. I didn't do well I did okay in school, but I didn't like to study. I was more of a partier, like to socialize kind of guy. And I liked drama. I did several plays at Moira Secondary, and I was fairly successful in that. In English, I really enjoyed English and the arts. And I said, I want to go to Ryerson. This is an up-and-coming place, and I can do acting, and I can do radio, I can do all kinds of things. But my mom kind of stepped in and go, no, Toronto back then, 76, and no, I need you to be close. You go to Queens, you can get in there, you got enough marks, and so the phone number's not long distance too much, and I won't have to spend too much money. I said, Mom, that's not a reason for choosing a university. But anyway, I'm not sorry I came here, but I didn't come for the right reason. I wasn't an academic kind of guy. Still am not.
I think there are two different sorts, and I'm going to be really generalizing here, but two sorts of people who come to university. And there are those who sign up for the applied science wing, if you will, study. So they have an idea of some of the things they want to do when they're finished their studying. And then there are those like you and I who come here and do general arts degrees because they don't have a clue what they want to do with this stuff.
You got that right.
And I can recall and the joke I tell is that, I started off in commerce, switched to French, and ended up graduating in geography. And
It's about the same.
I didn't have a real clue as to what I wanted to do. And when you came here, according to what you had sent me, you were doing psychology and sociology. Mm-hmm. Was there any reason why you chose those two courses?
Basically, the psychology part was to figure out what was wrong with me. It's like maybe I'll get a couple of hints on what's going on here. I enjoyed that part of the course, that psychology, until I got to statistics, and I wanted to continue on. I said, nope, it stops right here. The buck stops here. I can't do this stuff. And after that, I ended up getting a 3-year BA, and my mom said, that'll go far. You wait, that'll go far. Well, it went to radio, but that's okay. It still didn't do me any harm.
You see, mine was economics.
Yeah,
I took commerce. I figured I'll go into business, do that sort of thing. But I hit economics and there's no way I'm getting anywhere with this because I couldn't figure it out. And then, of course, later on, I spent 25 years working in the financial sector. Who knew?
It's strange, yeah. No, I think I wanted to continue on in psychology until I hit the statistics, and then I go, okay, that's enough. And then, I went on and decided to go into radio after that, because when you get out of Queens and you've got a BA in psychology and sociology, not a lot, unless you have your master's or whatever, PhD, which I was trying to get, but I said no, it's not going to help. And I told you I wasn't very academic. I didn't like to study or read too much, so I decided to go into radio, and I'm really glad I did. I got my stint here, of course. 2 or 3 shows, maybe not even, 3 or 4. And
so what prompted you to walk in the door here?
Well, it's an old story that goes back to when I was a kid and my mom worked at CJBQ. She would bring back stuff. I said, Mom, just bring back anything, commercial script, records, anything. And so she brought back country records. She'd bring back 45s. I had a little record player. I read all the commercials. I really got a feel for this. At an early age, I'd listen to CJBQ. I'd listen to CFTR, the Skip, they called it, at night, and places like that. And I really, really enjoyed it. I loved the way that they could go with the music, and it was really a thrill for me to do it. So then I decided to go to Brian Olney's School of Broadcasting. It was known back then at Loyalist College in Belleville. Mm-hmm. It was close to home, and I lived in Belleville at the time, and I really enjoyed that, that's for sure, and I got my job from there. Before
we go to Loyalist, at CFRC,
right,
any particular experiences that you recall, or people you may have met, or?
Nervous as hell was number one. At first, when I got in here, it's like, what? You want me to do what? It was a lot of fun. I really had a good time because I got to play what I wanted to do. I was my own sort of boss within boundaries. You had to have a certain amount of Canadian content in your music, and you had to have a certain amount of non-hits. And I can't say enough about the general manager at the time who sort of let me on and go on the air, was Steve Cutway. Mm-hmm. And Steve was just a brilliant, nice, all-around guy. And he said, Rick, don't worry about it. Just have some fun. I just want to hear what you want to do. And he came up and called me into his office after the show. I go, oh, no. What did I do now? Because my kind of style was rock and roll, like top 40 DJ kind of stuff, because that's what I listened to when I grew up. So everyone else was kind of doing a little bit different kind of stuff. And I thought, well, no, I'm going to do mainstream. I've always been that way. Yeah. And he said, that was amazing. I said, really? He goes, I loved it. Every single minute of that show, I loved. I loved the way you flowed with the music, the way you did it all. It was so different for us. I said, okay, can I come on again? Anytime you want.
So what show were you doing? Do you remember what the show was?
That's a tough one. It's just like a regular show.
I think around that time they had rock shows on later in the evening called Nocturne.
It was a rock show.
Yeah. It was probably that. It
was a rock show.
Well, it sounds like you're describing Steve, because I know Steve very well as well.
Yeah.
And he's that kind of guy who loves that rock and roll top 40.
He did. He liked that kind of top 40 style and the way I used to, push it out. And I wasn't laid back. I was just pumping out the stuff. And he said to me it was really, really unusual and good for the station. So I thought, well, if it's good for the station and people are liking it, why not continue on that way? So I did a few more shows like that, and that's what kind of got me my stint here. I really enjoyed doing that and look forward to it.
You've given us a list of tunes, and we're going to work through them during the course of our conversation here.
Well, Jerry Doucette, as I used to call him, is from Montreal, I believe. We're part of some kind of Quebec. And I was looking and scrounging around for CanCom back in 76. Now, aside from Edward Bear and a few other groups that weren't kind of my style, I wanted some rock.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, well, what do I... Oh, I like that song, Mama Let 'Em Play. It's got a kick with a guitar, and let's play that one. So I said, okay, that's the one I'm going to play on my show as part of my CanCon, and that's how it started, and I've played it many times. Even at weddings.
And that was, I think, his only hit, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he kicked around playing concerts up until the last year or so when he passed away. I just saw an obit done on him in a news story, and they had said that, he and his band, and I'm sure the band had changed personnel over the years, but they continued to play and continued to make a name for themselves, and people left the place enjoying the music that they had heard.
I didn't mean to say that there's not good old kickin' rock and roll Canadian like the Guess Who I used to love and that, but he had that extra little sound,
And that's probably why that song was so popular.
I think so.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so let's move along here and talk about the fact that you finally finished your degree at Queen's, and then you went to Loyalist.
Yes.
And let's talk about a name. And his name has come up a couple of times in conversations I've had lately, and that's Brian Olney.
Oh, yeah.
And Brian Olney was in commercial radio in Kingston for a long time, and he was gone by the time I got to the station where he was at. But talk a little bit about Brian.
Brian was an amazing guy. He started up the radio broadcasting program at Loyalist College in Belleville, and I didn't get a chance to work with him either. He was a little bit older than I was. But I had heard about him, and I was looking forward to working with him. And when they say he was Kingston's oldest teenager, and Patrick Kennedy did that wonderful article on him, it's true. He was a goofy guy. He was a very charismatic, fun, non-serious. That's not the proper way I wanted to say that, but he wasn't serious. But he was smart.
Yep.
And that's obvious when you get an MA and you continue on like that, but you wouldn't expect it from Brian. Do you know what I'm saying? He was the kind of guy that would just joke around.
Yeah.
But he was serious. And I'll tell you a little story about how things have changed. Back in 1976, we had to audition to get into that course at Loyalist.
Like a tape, you mean?
A tape.
Really? Okay.
And we had to do Sally Sells Seashells down by the seashore. I got through that. Things like that, which you would never do today.
No.
You can't do that. But we had to do it, and there was about 20, 25 of us in the group. And he inspired me so much to continue on with this because the way he would work with the kids was incredible. He would say, okay, you've got this strength. You should be in news. Rick, you're going to go to Montreal. I said, why Montreal? I can't even speak French. And he goes, I don't know. I just got a gut feeling you're going to go to Montreal. Well, I made it halfway to Kingston. And I worked with Aaron Davis. Does that name ring a bell from
Where do I know
CHFI in Toronto?
Okay.
Long, long time. And he said to her right off the bat, you're going to go to Toronto. And he was right. And another guy, Herbie Jameson. Or Jamie Herbison, we always used to tease him.
Nobody knew his real name.
Well, no. Anyway, he went on to a really good station too. I just saw him on Facebook. But anyway, there were other kids that were good too in the class. Brian could kind of tell who had that flow to them, and who was going to be successful. Whether I was a success, I spent 22 years in Kingston on radio, and I think he would have been proud of that if I talked to him at his home in Manitoulin Island. I think he'd remember me.
Didn't he become the president of a couple of colleges or something like that? I know he went on to the academic side and ran a couple of colleges before he eventually retired.
Yeah, he went to the University of Saskatchewan, if I'm not mistaken, and he was way up there in the hierarchy of Saskatchewan. And I thought, this is Brian Olney, the guy we used to goof around with in his office and not have a care in the world? This was the same guy. And he was a lot of fun, and he taught you a lot, too, because he inspired confidence in you. And that's what you needed as a kid, especially in a business where you had to entertain.
Yeah.
You know, and that's tough. It's not the easiest thing to do. You had to be not only an announcer, and you had to speak well, you had to entertain.
Yeah.
And he was a good one at teaching you that.
So when you eventually got to radio in Kingston, you were at CKWS.
Right.
And what were you doing there when you first started?
Believe it or not, I was working overnight weekends. So that was Friday night. I think it was 10-hour shifts or 8-hour shifts. Friday night till Saturday morning, and then Saturday night till Sunday morning. And that's unheard of today.
Yeah.
Maybe in Vancouver, maybe in Toronto, but not in Kingston or any smaller radio station. So I took that on. I said, okay, I'm going to have to deal with this. And finally, the driving got so bad, I had to get a motel room. And I said, I'm going to stay
You were still
here.
living in Belleville at the time?
Yeah, I was in Belleville. And my wife at the time was a nurse, and she was working. And I said, well, I can't do anything. I want this gig. And it was hard to get by. It was hard to get. And I got it within, 6 to 8 weeks after my stint at Loyalist. I was ready to go, and I applied for it. And Carl Cogan and Ron Fitzpatrick, who we were talking about, said, yeah, we're going to give the job to you. And you want it? I said, yeah, I sure do. And then I worked my way up to full-time. It was evenings and a little bit of everything here and there. And it was a good time at CKWS.
If you were to pick somebody from CKWS in that era who you might consider to be a mentor or somebody that you would look up to in terms of their skills on the radio, who would it be?
You might not have heard of this person so much, but Jim Ferguson, who is now out east.
Prince Edward Island.
Yeah, he was a great guy, and he really helped me a lot with things.
Yeah.
Ron Fitzpatrick also. He was a fun guy. He was another Brian Olney kind of character, maybe a little bit more serious, but he was the kind of guy that, convinced me to do things. And everyone seemed to let me go with different things. They didn't seem to hammer on me, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Like I had a character called George Bear from the Bob's Lake area. Like it was a bear. And I did this by slowing down the tape, right? And anyway, they didn't say, don't do that, that's stupid.
Yeah.
You just did it. I just did it. And that's the thing, if anybody's out there in radio right now, just do it until they tell you not to.
That's right.
Because the only way you're going to be able to get it on is by trying it.
It's better to ask for forgiveness than permission, as the saying goes.
It was funny. I ran into, there was a gas station on the 401, and a kid recognized my name on the card. And he says, Rick Choma. He says, oh, I remember you on the radio. And I thought at the time was Fly FM or something. No. He says, you did the George Bear character. I said, that was 100 years ago. How did you? He said, oh, I remember. I used to stay up late to hear it.
You never know what people are going to remember. You don't know
these things, so just do it. I say, just do it until you're told not to. And I've done a lot of things that no, don't be doing that. But anyway.
Jeez. So you're at CKWS and you're doing various shifts, and then you're working your way up the ladder in terms of, and in radio, for those who may not be aware, who are listening, the optimum slot for a radio announcer is the morning run from 6 to 10 or 6 to 9 or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like every other job. You have to pay your dues and you have to work different shifts. And did you ever get assigned to something that you didn't like doing or wasn't your cup of tea when you were doing radio initially?
Not that I can think of right off the bat. Most of the times I had my choice. I was lucky enough. Well, no one wants to work weekend nights. That's something I had to jump into.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have got in.
Yeah.
But one day I was on the steps of City Hall, and I was covering something for CKWS, and I ran into Tony Orr. And Tony and I got just talking. I had known him not really well, and he said to me, he said, "You ever thought about coming over to work for us?" I said, "No, but have you got something?" He said, "Yeah, Brian Ashley, who's working afternoons here, has gone down to Watertown." I said, "I got an opening there. If you're interested, you can come over and see us and, bring tape. And I know what you sound like, but bring a tape and, we'll talk about it." So I did. I don't know if the money was any better, but I thought, in radio, you got to jump around a little bit. I found that out. You have to kind of keep moving, and possibly I made a mistake by not going out of Kingston, but my kids were here, and I was a family guy, and I didn't want to drag them into Montreal or Toronto or, so I stayed. And Tony was great to work with, another inspiration for me. Very, very smart man, very good at writing, very good at broadcasting. He taught me the art of précis writing for news, and I really loved the news at that time. And then all of a sudden, this other show popped up. I don't know if I'm going too fast on this here, but Fly FM was just in its infancy. And John Wright, I'm snickering because he had a hat on that the promotional people had given him, and it looked like wings from a fly. And he said, "This is what we're going to be doing with our new station." I was going to kill me for saying that, but anyway, John's a great guy.
We'll make sure he gets a copy of the tape.
Yeah, another great inspiration. And he and Tony Orr said, "Well, we want you to do Fly FM. We want you to go on Fly FM." And I said, "Doing what?" He says, "Well, they're doing the news, but we want you to be more of a personality. We know you like telling stories and doing a few gags and different things." So I said, "Okay, let's try it." And then I ended up probably 11 years with Bruce Campbell and Jackie St. Pierre as a news/personality guy. I got to do the
There's
bits.
2 names I've forgotten about.
Yeah.
Holy mackerel.
Wow.
One of the things that people may not know, but it's usually fairly verboten for somebody to cross the street to go and work from one station in town to another station in town. And you may get people upset at the station that you're leaving.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not something that happens often. But you did it in this particular case. And it was just the nature of the person that was talking to you, Tony Orr, offering you something that was a little different. And like you say, and I know it's a consideration I had, and for the same reasons that you don't want to take your family on the road trip moving from town to town just to build your career, because that gets frustrating for everybody. But you have to do that if you really want to get into a big market at a big station where you're making big money. You have to move around a lot. Yeah. In your case, you decided to move around within the same geographical sector without having to move your house, which is different than some other people might have chosen to do. A Foot in Cold Water. Now, I mentioned to you before we started, this is a Canadian band, and wasn't there talk about them being somebody else, the Beatles? Sounding like the Beatles, or I thought when that song first came out that, somebody thought it wasn't really this unknown band, it was somebody else entirely, but you said you've seen them in person.
I saw them live, and it was at, I think, the Empire Theatre. Is that the one that Andy Forgie has? Anyway, it was the one at the other end of Kingston, not the park, but the other one.
Belleville. The other end of Belleville.
Yeah, Belleville. Yeah. We're talking Belleville now.
Yeah.
And they came out, and they only had one hit, so I didn't know how they were going to do a concert. It was called Make Me Do Anything You Want.
Right.
And I thought the coolest thing, I was only about 17, is, well, they had 2 or 3 cases of beer on the stage. Had to be piss warm, but anyway, they had it there, and I thought, wow, this is really cool. Yeah, these guys are good with long hair.
How do I join the band?
Yeah. So they sang, and we got it was fun. And I've always remembered them. These one-hit wonders always boggled my mind. They just stop.
Yeah.
They make a bit of money, and we don't want to do anymore. So,
or else they go and they form another band, and they never explain the connection from one band to the other.
I know.
So you're working at CFLY. So you are doing the news as part of the morning run with Bruce and Jackie? Mm-hmm. Okay. So how free... I'm sort of curious about that. So they were giving you a bit of carte blanche to be more of a personality in doing the news, which is different from the expectation of a lot of people. Like, if you're going to do the news, you have to be serious about doing the news, and you can't make jokes, and you have to read.
Oh, yeah. I understand, but
that doesn't strike me as your cup of tea.
No, I couldn't. And I dealt with a guy, another inspiration too for me was Rob Wood. And Rob didn't have any background in radio at all. He was manager type style, but he was excellent. He let you do what you wanted to do, and he protected you when things would come up. And I had some things, and I had so much fun doing that. And if you don't have fun doing your job, forget it. Because it's not worth it. Yep. And I said, can I do this kind of stuff? Yeah. And even at one time he said, okay, let's have this part just for you. It's called 7:50 Morning Trivia. You do this silly trivia questions, and they would call in, and I'd make sure that it was humorous, at least according to me. And it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. And I got myself into a bit of hot water. Not cold water, but a little bit of hot water at times. But it was fun, and I got the phone calls coming in. And but Rob handled it so nicely that I didn't have to worry about it. I always had him at my back because he trusted me, and he trusted that I wasn't a bad person. I remember one time, and just a quick story, I said we were talking about the Wicca religion, the witches. And it just came up. I don't know how it came up, maybe a story or something. And I said, you remember the Wicca people, Bruce? I said, they make the Wicca baskets, the Wicca furniture, the Wicca. And you know what? I got about 5 calls, all directed down to Rob Wood. And oh my God, he's making fun of religion. Now that's it. I've had it with this guy. Well, Rob just answered them, and he goes, I don't think Rick's that type. I don't think he'd make fun of religion. I think he was doing a play on words. Wicca, wicker. That's all he was wanting to do. Because I didn't mention anything. I didn't care what you do or who you worship to. Yeah. What is it my business? But people decided they were going to call. And that, you know what, to me, I thought that was a good sign. Because they're listening. Yeah. I got their attention. Aha. So there was a few moments.
And that's hard to do.
Well, it is. Yeah. I think it is. And there was a few moments like that. And I got Bruce going pretty good. He had a great big laugh, like Ed McMahon. He was my Ed McMahon kind of thing. And we had a lot of fun. And Jackie was more the prissy kind of thing. And we'd tease her about bringing in egg whites instead of the whole egg, and they'd stick the whole place up. And Jackie, so it was like a family. And people who remember that show still remember it to this day. Yeah. And they enjoyed it. And it was probably the most fun I've ever had on radio. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's take that a little bit further. And as a couple of old radio guys who are listening to radio today, and do you see much change in the way radio is being presented? Like, take morning shows, and...
oh, yeah, I do. I see a big change. I see a lot of, what's the word? Control. Like regimentation. Yeah. Don't say that. Don't do this. Play that. Yeah. Yeah. Don't talk about that. Like the Wicca thing would have just been, okay, that's it. You're suspended. Yeah. Well, why? I didn't do anything really wrong. If I have to apologize, I'll apologize. And Rob said, don't do that. You were having some fun. Yeah.
And I think, too, a lot of the control, if you will, for the presentation on air is being sort of dictated by a head office somewhere in a big city in a big high-rise building.
Yeah,
and,
you're right.
And there's not – I get the impression at times that there's not that much local flavor in what's being presented.
True enough. Yeah. There wasn't that locals thing that you could go comment on. You're right. And it's become a big business. Yeah. Back then you had to make money, and we did it, but we didn't do it in the same style. Yeah. And it was like warmer, more people involved. We had huge staffs. At one time at the CKLC Fly FM newsroom, we had like 10 people working there. Yeah. So we were everywhere and covering everything. And you don't see that now. They don't have the budgets for it. Or if they have the budget, they're not using it that way. Yeah.
They're not making the kind of money they used to be able to make.
I guess not.
Given with all the streaming services and people getting music from all kinds of different ways.
That's right, yeah.
Speaking about making money, at some particular point, you decided to leave radio entirely.
Yeah.
And you went to work at the health unit, right?
It was a big decision for me, and one I shouldn't have made. But anyway, I did it. And, I learned a lot, but I learned a lot that I missed radio a lot.
Yep.
And it was like an office job. And I was kind of stuck in a cubicle.
Yeah.
And it was just at the start of the computer age, 89, 90, where it became into the office and you had to learn the computer. Well, we had the best training that you could do without spending a fortune on it. And I didn't do well with it.
Yeah.
And it became very frustrating for me. And I'm not going to say anything negative about the health unit. They do good work. But I just didn't feel that I fit in.
Yep.
And, because my background wasn't that. Again, academics, no, I don't really want to do that kind of thing. But I did it, to be honest with you, for the money.
Yep.
They have more money to spend. And I thought, okay, I've got a family. They need the money. I need the money. Everyone needs the money. Yep. So I decided, I'll take their offer up. And anyway, it lasted for a little while.
Yeah.
And eventually I ended up back after a few odd jobs here, and then I ended back up with John Wright and back on K-Rock.
Who crossed the street and created his own station.
Yeah, exactly.
Which was big news in the radio world.
You're not kidding.
Because,
Smart guy.
If you go back to the fact that, CFRC started in 1922, and then CKWS was in 1942, and I forget what year CKLC started, but the CKLC and CKWS were it in town in terms of commercial radio. So it was, the battle between those two, and all of a sudden this upstart comes on the scene with a whole new focus and generates a lot of attention. I imagine he had a pretty good marketing budget.
Yeah. John wasn't afraid to spend money.
Yeah.
He didn't. He spent it, and he knew what he was spending it on. And all I can say is John was a very extremely smart man. He liked me. So, so that's part of his intelligence.
Which made him even smarter.
Oh, yeah, sure. John liked Rick. Rick got into him a lot of trouble, and we had some fun nights on his boat there on the St. Lawrence. And we won't talk about that. But, John was a good guy. And
there's film somewhere.
Pardon me?
There's film somewhere of those nights on the boat.
I hope not. But he was a good egg, and I really enjoyed working for him.
Yeah.
And he hired Rob Wood, so he's not stupid.
And Rob
was a manager, and he knew how to manage people and how to get things going so people didn't get all in an uproar. You know?
Oh, yeah. If I can throw in my 2 cents worth, is that there are a lot of managers out there who may have been good announcers or good salespeople, but weren't good managers of people.
Yeah, exactly.
But got promoted because they were successful at their job before.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to see or to run into somebody every once in a while who knows what they're doing when it comes to being a manager.
Yeah, you're right.
The 5-man electrical band.
And again, this is because of my mom bringing back albums. I thought, well, that's a really cool song. Maybe the album's pretty good. Well, I think they only had one hit, but still, I ordered that album, and I liked it. And I think I even played that song on CFRC as CanCon. Mm-hmm. And, it was a pretty good deal. And someone stole their song, not stole it, but used it.
Yeah.
About 15 years later. Don't ask me who it was, but I can't remember.
I saw the name last night.
Yeah,
do you think I can remember it today? No.
No.
That's what happens when you get old.
So it was a good song. If someone else
yeah.
takes it from you and makes it a big hit. So anyway, that's the one I chose.
The writers got some money. The other song I liked by them was Absolutely Right.
Yes. Very good song.
Which I don't know if it was a big hit or not, but...
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah. It was a good song.
Absolutely.
5-man electrical band. Okay, so you're working... What are you doing at K-Rock when you move there? To John
that
Wright
was
Station.
kind of a mixed thing. John, it was a rock station, right? And these guys were all rockers. And I was an older guy coming in and, is he going to be able to rock or is he going to be able to do the news? So John was scratching his head. And when I first started, or it was still trying to get in, the recession hit back in 2008. And so, oh boy, no spending, no hiring. And I said, oh, John, come on, let's go here. No, can't do anything. Anyway, I finally got in, and he started me on news in the afternoon and fill in for news. And then he said, well, how about we try you? I know you want to do this DJ stuff. Let's put you on Saturday morning and Sunday morning, 6 to 12 each day. I said, fair enough. I'm going up against Jeff Code, the most known radio announcer in the whole world. I said, we'll give him a shot. Never did beat him in the ratings, but he had so many people listening to that show. Anyway, so
that was on the country station.
Yeah, the country station. Sorry, yeah. To explain, I was here, and he was just across the way.
And he was on CFMK at one point, which is the FM station for CKWS.
Great guy.
Yeah.
And he had everyone in the world listening to him. He'd bring his own records in and everything else, and the phones never stopped ringing. Never stopped. And the people would want it because he would say their names.
Yeah.
There's nothing better, I was taught one time, than saying someone's name. That's what they want to hear the most. So he got it out, and people still love him to this day. And
but they weren't phoning you?
Well, a few, probably mostly complaints.
Family and friends.
Yeah. No, it was fun.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. It was different, because the rock was new.
Yeah.
And I was an old timer, and they didn't play too much of the old stuff, newer stuff, and I had to adapt to it.
Yeah.
And but I had fun, and it was good. And John, again, was very supportive, and so was everyone else there.
I can't think of anybody who worked at all three stations in one town before.
Yeah, and there's, if you count CFRC, that's four
stations.
Four. And then CJAI for a while in Amherst Island. I forgot to write that down. That's 5. So, yeah, pretty well them all. And just hopped around, even kicks. I would have to work there, fill in for months at a time. I did,
I appreciate you taking the time to come in here and sit down and chat. I've enjoyed it.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Retired radio broadcaster Rick Choma. And I know Rick would join me in expressing our gratitude to those many volunteers who kept the dream of community radio alive at CFRC over the last 100 years. Thanks again, Rick. To those listening, thank you. Talk soon.
The theme music for the podcast is Stace's Oasis, written and performed by Kingston musician Tim Aylesworth. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions about any of the episodes, please send a note to the KingstonianPodcast@gmail.com. For details on upcoming guests, follow us on Facebook. The Kingstonian Podcast is hosted by Dave Cunningham and produced in Kingston, Ontario, Canada.